Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Awesome. Welcome. Thank you for coming. My name is Tony Carter, and I am the director of Charis Library. I've been here about a year and a half, and one of my goals for the year was to try to get out on campus more. And even though this isn't technically getting out on campus, reaching out through Zoom works too. So I want to meet more faculty and students. And so this is the start to that. It's one way I want to do it. And in my previous life, I was an instruction librarian for many, many years. So I have a deep interest in helping users understand how to use the library resources or others' resources, including Google Scholar. So it's just me on, so I'm going to ask to make sure you're muted, and that I should say this isn't a workshop. I intentionally called it a presentation because I've not been able to master the Zoom workshop. If somebody tries to put me in a Zoom room, then I Zoom out. So I'm not going to do that to you. So it's just a presentation. So if you can mute, but if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. And I should have some time at the end to answer them. And who knows, maybe we can do one of these in person before long. Why Google Scholar? I chose Google Scholar because it's pretty much universal. If you're on a college campus, if you're a faculty, if you're a student, if you're in any kind of subjects, topics, whatever it is, you're probably going to use Google Scholar at some point. And if you don't use it, this will be an introduction to it. So I know you're busy people, so let's get started. The agenda today is I am going to take a few minutes to talk about when and why to use Google Scholar. I think it's important to understand what you're searching and where that stuff comes from before you jump in. And for those out who teach, you can explain to students what's in Google Scholar. And then we'll go and do some live strategies for searching and accessing materials. I've not completely timed the whole thing, but I promise you I won't keep you longer than 12:50. Okay, so what is Google Scholar? Google Scholar is and if I'm looking to the side, I do have notes, so I just want to make sure I cover everything. Google Scholar is a web-based search engine that covers all topics. It's Google's attempt, and it's a pretty good attempt, to bring together scholarly resources. According to Google's About page, or Google Scholar's About page, it provides a simple way to broadly search for scholarly literature. Just a few sentences further, it says it provides a search of all broad areas of research. So you notice those words broad, that is going to be, or that word broad is going to be a theme, although really broad is a very ambiguous word. Is that the right word? It's hard to define broad. So take that for what it is, but that's how they describe it, as broad. The whole point of Google Scholar is they want you to be able to get to scholarly materials, open access preferably. And what I mean by that is Google Scholar is trying to find a full text article for you. Whatever is in there, it wants to give you the full text. And that's one of the reasons I think that it's so popular, because it does a very good job in finding the full text. So we'll get started. For those who have never used it, just a quick screenshot. This is what it looks like. It looks similar to Google, except that it's searching a certain type of information. Okay, so why and when to use it, or I would say what's in it, where does it come from, and why that matters. And I think you'll see why it matters, why it's so important when we're done with this, when I'm done talking. And I want to go ahead and get this kind of out of the way. This isn't a advertisement or commercial for the library databases, but I do think it's important to understand when you're searching Google Scholar and when you're searching a library database, how those are different. And I have subject underlined because we do have databases that are very broad, like Google Scholar, but we have subject databases, as you know, that are very specific: psychology, biology, philosophy, all of those. So you've got a broad search with Google, and then you have a narrower search with with a database. And for those who don't know, the database, I'm referring to the subscription databases that the library pays for and that you have access to. And what confuses people is that you can find the same things in both of these places. It's not a perfect overlap, but you could go to Google Scholar and find stuff that's in our data, same articles, or vice versa. The differences are in a lot of the ways that you search. And again, let me say, they don't have the exact same information, but similar. Again, Google Scholar, broad searches, databases, more narrow, however you want to define narrow. And we're going to talk in a minute about how Google Scholar defines scholarly. They have a broad definition, I think, and usually the subject databases have a more narrow definition of what scholarly is. Google Scholar has few limiters. If you've ever used it, you've noticed that you can't limit to peer review if that's important to you. While subject databases have more options as far as that goes, as limiting your searches. This is particularly important if you're assigning things to students, to know that Google Scholar is going to give them a familiar interface. They're going to know it's going to look like Google, whereas subject databases is often going to be different and new to them. And finally, neither one is comprehensive. So if you search Google Scholar, you may be missing things in the subject that are in the subject database. If you search a subject database, you could very well be missing things that are Google Scholar. So I sort of use them in tandem, and I'll show you a little bit more of that. So let's talk about, first off, how does Google Scholar define scholarly? And how do you define scholarly? Google Scholar defines scholarly. Well, they don't tell us. They don't tell us their exact definition. They don't tell us their exact algorithm that they use or whatever it is that they go out and find things. But these are the things that it pulls back, that it has. So this makes me feel like they consider these things scholarly. Journal articles and conference papers. Journal articles are often, the peer-reviewed articles that we look for the most if we're in Google Scholar. Theses and dissertations. Academic books. So academic books are, it's interesting to me that they use scholarly, but they don't say scholarly books. They say academic books. I'm just assuming, because they don't tell us, that means that it's coming from an academic publisher, whoever that may be. And kind of a variety of things here. Preprints. Preprints are those articles that have been accepted but not yet been published. So you might find preprints, abstracts, technical reports. And I put a presentation here. Google doesn't list this, but I'm putting an asterisk beside it because you can find people's presentations, because mine's in there. So I'm going to talk about that too. And then also, I know very little about this piece, but there are court opinions and patents. So for faculty and instructors out there, if you ask students to use a scholarly source and you're allowing them to use Google Scholar, which is perfectly legit, make sure your definition of scholarly matches Google Scholar's definition of scholarly. Would you accept any of these items as scholarly if a student turned it in as a resource? Because I have a hard time sometimes figuring out what's a peer-reviewed article, what's a conference paper. It takes a minute, and it's very difficult for students. So if it's in Google Scholar, they're going to assume it's scholarly. So what you need to do is, if you mean peer-reviewed, when you say scholarly, you mean peer-reviewed, make sure they know, if they're using Google Scholar, how to identify a peer-reviewed article. Because if not, they could very well come back with any of these pieces and not realize that it's not what you're looking for. So just a little tip there that a librarians see this quite a bit, that there's not a clear understanding of what scholarly means. So this is Google Scholar's definition of scholarly, I guess you could say. Keep in mind that, again, I've already said this, but it's not comprehensive. Here's an important one. Google Scholar indexes articles, not journals. So if you find an article in Google Scholar from the Journal of Abnormal Psychology, for instance, that doesn't mean you're going to find all the articles from that journal. When it goes out, when its crawlers go out, I don't know the technical words, but when it goes out to look for things, it's not pulling in journals, it's pulling in specific article level metadata. So keep that in mind as well, that you may not be able to find every issue of every journal, of the same journal, if you happen to find one article out of that journal. And finally, and this is important, to get into Google Scholar, for it to pull metadata into its results, it has to, the source has to be provided in full text, or there has to be an abstract. And this is, again, why it's such a popular source, because it pulls in it finds the full text. Wherever it can find it, it finds the full text, or the full abstract. This middle one, though, I think is the most important of this to remember. Best times to use it, I think, if you're searching for a known item, and known items are those things that you know the title of it. Google Scholar is excellent at this. You know the title, type it in, it brings it back. You're just getting started on a topic. Now, this may be more targeted towards students, and sometimes if you're very new to the topic, it's better to start with Google or something very basic. But if you're just trying to get a sense of a topic, Google Scholar is a good place to start. And interdisciplinary research, because it covers so many disciplines. If you go to a subject database, you may have a little bit more hard time if you're just in like a biology database finding interdisciplinary research. Not saying you can't, but Google Scholar is really good for that. Just a few points. All right. Okay, so I'm almost done talking about what's in it and where it finds things, but this is also important. Where Google Scholar finds its stuff. Have you ever thought about that? Do you care? As long as it's there, I think it's good to have this information. The front one, this isn't all the places, but these are some of the big places where it's going to find things. And one of them is university repositories. And a university repository, if you're not familiar with that, most large research institutions have a homegrown system that allows their faculty and students and staff or whoever that's doing research to upload those articles, those presentations, those data sets, whatever it is they're going to share with the world, to this repository, and it's open access for everyone. That's the reason one of my presentations show up, because I have some presentations in a repository, and even though Google says it doesn't index those, it does, because it's pulling it in. And just to give you an example, if you're not familiar, like I said, most big universities have them. This is the University of Alabama's, and they allow faculty and all those doing research to upload any of these things they want to upload, and then anyone in the world can search for them. The way that if you're curious, the way they get around copyright for those peer-reviewed articles or those published articles is many times now journals will allow you to put a version of your article on an institutional repository. They're called university repositories, institutional both, but they will allow you to do that. They might allow you to put the full PDF, or if they have restrictions, they say, okay, you can put the HTML before it's published, or you can put the preprint or whatever it is. So when they do that, people can go in. This is just an example. These are people from the University of Alabama who have uploaded their research. So Google Scholar loves these. It goes in, pulls out that metadata. These should have full text with them and brings it into the search results. The second place that's a big place is academic publishers. And this probably doesn't surprise you. You've got your commercial publishers and you've got university presses as well, that it's looking at its websites. So for instance, here's Sage Journals. It's going to look at the entire Sage Journals website, which is a huge publisher. But, when it finds something like the Journal of Social Work, it's going to say, oh, the Journal of Social Work has these articles. One's open access. Let's pull that out. These other two may have abstracts. They're restricted right now, but there may be abstracts if I click on them. If there is, we'll pull those in too. So academic publishers' websites are another big place. Third place are directories, university directories, or your personal portfolio online. I just Googled this. This was the first result. This is a professor at MIT. The university has a page for every professor or every faculty member where they can list their research. This is a place where metadata can be pulled from. You'll notice that full text is available. So all the Google Scholar can find it there. But if you do have more of a homegrown website, or that you've developed yourself, there are instructions on Google Scholar about how you can get it to crawl your page if it doesn't already. So just keep that in mind. And lastly, professional organizations. It's looking for, this is American Historical Association. They have research and publications. So it finds these, if you click on these are actually full text. I think this is an open access journal now. So it's going in and finding these. So those are just some places to know that, let me go back. Some examples of where Google Scholar is finding things to pull in. And I'm very loose with my language. I know there's a better word than things. I do. But I'm hoping that you can visualize this with me. It's going out, it's pulling it in. So I know we've got a question or two, but like I said, I'm going to try to wait till the end. The search strategies. This is my last slide. And I had to bring in Boolean. I know the good old Boolean. It's old-fashioned maybe, but it does apply to Google Scholar. And it applies to all the databases too that we use. Quick review for those who don't know what this is. We're going to ignore, first of all, the knots. The knots are problematic. So we're not going to worry about that. But when you're searching, let's say you're searching Google Scholar for violence and television. You want to find articles or resources that have those two things in them. Google Scholar automatically knows you mean and. You don't have to type and. You just type violence, television. We're going to find articles that have both of those things in them. However, there is another search that Google Scholar has to be told to do, and that's an OR search. So if you have, and this would be a terrible actual search because it would be a huge, it would be a really big results page. But if you were looking for colleges or universities, you don't have to have both of them in the same article, but you want to see just one of them. You use OR. And the way that you remember this is OR is more. If you're not getting enough results and you have two words that are either synonymous or sort of mean the same thing, you can put an OR between them and it will expand that search. So I'm going to illustrate that now. I'm going to go to Google Scholar. Let's see. And I'm logged in with my Google account. So that's why you're seeing recommended articles for me. This may seem elementary, but we're going to do it anyway because it's worth knowing. I'm going to go through my notes where I've got my notes that I need. Here they are. Okay. As an example, I'm looking for bananas and health benefits. Google knows that I'm looking for both of those together. I always put any kind of phrase in quotation marks because it keeps those words together. Otherwise, you might get health here and benefits there. And Google Scholar searches the entire full text. It doesn't just search an abstract. It's looking for those words anywhere in these full text. So that's why it's important to keep those in quotations. I searched that and I get about 42,000 results, which is still obviously too many, but you can see that health benefits are together, which that's what I wanted to happen. To bring that or in, just to illustrate, let's say I'm looking for bananas. I'm looking for bananas and plantains. I get 37,000 results. I want those both in the same article. However, let's say I'm okay with either one. This is where you have to put in the or and let Google Scholar know I'm interested in articles that are about, I guess I should put bananas. It would pick it up anyway. Bananas or plantains. So what should happen here is our results or is more, our results should go up. And they did quite a bit to almost 700,000, which is, totally unrealistic to look through. But that is how there may be a situation where this is crucial for you to use, or it makes life easier for you to use this or. It just remember, it has to be words that are somewhat similar or synonymous, such as or musa. I think that is the Latin word for bananas. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it was going to look for bananas or the Latin word for bananas. And that brings in a lot too. I probably wouldn't do that kind of stuff. That's not a great search, but if you put them together, the number will go down 122,000. So the thing to remember here is that and is assumed. Or you have to actually type the or and let Google Scholar know you're looking for either or. And always use quotation marks when you've got any kind of phrase that you're trying to search. If you look over on the side, there are not many options for limiting, unfortunately. But I meant to say this earlier, whenever I've taught variations of this before, and the one question I always get is, how can I narrow my search in Google Scholar? And my response is, you really can't. Or that Google Scholar, remember their definition of broad, it's not made to do that. That's what the databases are made to do. So keep in mind that's, we have very limited limiters. Just that's all you can do, dates, pretty much. If you've ever wondered how sort by date is different than this one, than the dates here, sort by date is actually bringing in the latest one, the ones that have been pulled in recently. So it's going to find a lot of them are going to be brand new, but if someone decided they scanned in an old article that they've written on their personal website from 1996, Google Scholar finds it and pulls it in. It could very well end up here as something that has recently been pulled into the database or to the search engine. Review articles, I've not used that a whole lot. It's my understanding that review articles are either going to be something like literature reviews or reviews of authors or topics that you searched. That's how they explain it. I don't quite understand that, but there's not many when I click on review articles. So you could probably figure it out as you went through a review. But I've not had a reason to actually use it that way. Okay. Let's look at the advanced search. If you click on the little, we call that the hamburger or whatever, the 3 lines. But if you go down and you click on advanced search, it's already filled in my search here. This is another way to search. This does allow you to do a little bit more of limiting. So I forgot to show you something. I'll go back and show you in a moment. Think of it this way. This is your and. That first line is your and. I want to find bananas and plantains. The plantains. I think it's plantains. Sorry. Bananas and plantains. I want both of those words. Here's your phrase. I want to know what the health benefits are. And I'm going to go ahead and keep that in quote to be safe. I think if you didn't put quotes in this box, it would automatically put them for you. But I want to go ahead because that's a phrase with at least one of these words, and that's your or. And so I'm going to say weight loss or blood sugar. And you'll notice that I'm not having to put the or here because it knows what it's set up. It knows I'm not having to tell it in the simple search. It knows I'm looking for either or. So that's the and, that's the phrase, and that's the or. And it's going to search anywhere in the article. This is a very specific search. So it has a purpose, but it's very specific. And then authors, sources, dates. So if I run the search, it's going to come back and it's going to show me what it looks like here. It doesn't mean you have to be able to read it. Like it's like algebra. I feel like it needs something else there to help us, but it's running that search we just did, and it gave me 510 results. If I want, let's see, if I want more results, no, that's not right. Less results. I'm going to take out plantains. So it's only going to look for bananas. So that should make it go down. Nope, it was the opposite. That's what I thought. I don't need to be doing this without looking at let's go back. I took out bananas. That's what happened. You have plantains, that limits it. You have to have both of those in the article. If you take that out, you don't. So your results go up. I'm going to stop there before I get you confused or confuse myself. Okay. One thing I forgot to show you was you can search by author if you've not done this before here. Played around with it though. It's not a great search. I happened to find this person. This was a professor of mine. I happened to find him, but it took me typing his name in several different ways because he's George C., GC. Here it is working with George Rabel. And then when you do find your author, if you go there, it usually takes you to their Scholar webpage, which you should have one of these if you don't. And if you want one, I can help you set one up. That shows me all the things that are indexed in Google Scholar that he has published has been found of his. So you can do author search. You can do a title search. You do the same thing. You would just type in the title of the article. Or you can do a journal search. And in that case, it's source. So author, title, source. Those are some options for you. If you go to advanced search, you can do the exact same thing by putting them in those boxes. Depends on if you want to write the code yourself or you want to let them do it for you. So for a source, I'm going to say Journal of Social Work. Again, quotations. So what I should find is that all of these articles come from the Journal of Social Work. See, here's one that doesn't, so that's a problem. I see what's well, it's picking up some things. This search is okay, but it's not a perfect search. Maybe I'm not putting let me do education. If that works better. Maybe that's what it was. I didn't have the complete title. If you go to advanced search, you can do the exact same thing. Did not do what I wanted it to do. If you go down to journal, again, I'm still going to use quotes to be on the safe side. Oops. I didn't even see if it gave me the same amount of results, but okay. One more piece about searching. There's a lot to think about. If you go to cited by, and you may already know this, if you go to cited by, there is an option search within the citing articles. So this article has been cited by 1,500 other sources. I want to look for a specific something in those sources. I'm just going to do gender just because I see one. Check that out. Let me go back and do it again. So I've got 1,500 results. I put in gender. I'm searching the citations, and it knocks it down. So it searched within those to find just those articles or sources that cited this person that talks about gender in some way. Okay. And we're doing pretty good on time. Let me take a break here. I'm going to check and see. Let me look at the questions Kim asked. So would it be accurate to say that all peer-reviewed articles are scholarly, but not all scholarly articles are peer-reviewed? Correct. And that is an important distinction to know and to make sure your students know. All right. Now accessing materials. This is where those links come in. The links on the side. They come in from many different places, but if it just says PDF and it gives you a link, that usually means that it's open access. That Google Scholar has found a free version of this article in one of those places that we looked at that I showed you, or in other places. It has found it, so it makes life pretty easy. I'm not going to do that, but it's asking me to download the PDF, but you get it. Government websites, organizational websites, EDU websites, although I don't really consider that an EDU site. But here's where the trick comes in. And for those who don't know, we have partnered with Google Scholar. Google Scholar knows that they know what we have. They know what articles we have, basically. They know what resources we have in our databases. So because of that, it should allow me to get full text of many journals. Any journal that the library subscribes to, when I say any, for the most part, I should be able to, if I find it here, I should be able to find a link. It says Athens State, and that would take me to the database. So for those that don't have any links, all these have links. There's a lot of this is open access. But if we find some that don't have links, I'm not seeing one. So this full view is interesting because it's taking me here. It's taking me to Athens State University and it's wanting me to search, but that's not what we want to do. So I'm going to go to settings. Over here, where we looked at advanced search, let's go down to settings. And then we're going to click on library links. Okay, this is where you've got to let Google Scholar know that you're affiliated with Athens State. So if you've not done this already, please do it. And it says, oh, okay, I get it. You're with Athens State. So, I found out that it actually sometimes it loses this setting. So you'll want to go in and make sure, if you're not seeing any of those links that say Athens State, go in and make sure that it hasn't lost the setting. But again, it's library links, Athens State. So now when I search, I'm just going to start from fresh, and I'll search for something that I know about. Oh, I know what's wrong. I'm searching case law. How did that happen? We don't want to do that. Okay. Or I don't. Okay, so these first few, apparently we don't subscribe to these databases that have these journals in them or these articles in them, because these are all open access, free. But we do have this one. It's free, but we can also find it through the databases. So now when I click on this, it should take me straight, instead of taking me to that search screen, it will take me to a page that shows you the different places you can find it within our collection. So if it works correctly, this should take us straight to the article. Yay, it worked. Okay. And usually if it gives you multiple choices, usually any of those choices should work. I just start with the top one and go down. So there will be situations like this where there's no other free version and there's we can only get it through you can only get access to it through our collection. And if that's the case, let's try that. View full text. And there it is. I just have to take one extra step and go to the PDF full text, and it should bring it up. So that's how, and I found out this morning too, I thought that if I was on campus, even if I didn't have that box checked, it would pick me up as Athens State, and it doesn't. I had to go in and actually check it, even though I was within the IP range. So just make sure you always have that box checked. The one thing I didn't have to do was authenticate. So when I logged in, I didn't have to log in. It took me straight to the article. If you're at home, it will stop you right here and it will say log into Charis Library. And that's when you'll log in and it will take you to where you need to go. Okay, let me look at my notes and see if there's anything I've missed. I can move pretty fast. And there's a lot of things I can show you, but I wanted to keep it basic. I think that's all I have right now. So I want to see, do we have any questions? Has any questions come through? You can open up if you want to chat and talk. I realize I haven't smiled this whole time, have I? I've been very serious. Well, oh, Jeff,
I was just going to say, I don't have any questions, but this is very useful. So thank you for providing this overview.
you're welcome. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. Okay, well, what I may do is I will, oh, I do have one chat, but I will probably send out like just a little thing survey that says, would you like to see more of these things, or what would interest you? Because we could do this on specific databases. We could do it in person where you're actually working. I'd like to get a sense if there's any interest in that. So thank you so much for coming, and I'm going to let you out 10 minutes early. Thanks, everyone.